I am so excited to announce that iDRIVEACLASSIC is now sponsored by Adrian Flux, one of the UK's leading classic car insurers. If you're looking for classic car insurance, I've popped a link to Adrian Flux in the description box below. Hi guys, it's Steph from iDRIVEACLASSIC, and today I'm back with what many of you will consider a proper classic, the MGB Roadster. Now, in true iDRIVEACLASSIC style, we are vastly underprepared for this. So it's a snowy day, it's very cold, so we're not taking the hood down, but we're going to give this car a good once over. Very excited to show you it. Belongs to a very good friend of mine, so be very nice in the comments. And if you recognise the number plate, it's in the trailer for It's a Sin. So not only is she a decent classic, she's also a bit of a celebrity. So let's kick off and have a look round. The MGB is instantly recognisable as one of those cars that people would call a proper classic. It was made between 1962 and 1980, although it was only available as a roadster until 1965, when the MGB GT was released. The MGB was the replacement for the MGA, and interestingly, as it was designed largely by Don Hayter, it was a car designed to fit a growing market, which was the affordable sports car market. So it's a really interesting time where people had gone maybe kind of 10 years prior for it being quite a luxury to have one car, to this era that was coming in where people with a little bit more money were having a car as standard and having something special for the weekend. Now, the MGB was originally sold with chrome bumpers, and that's how a lot of people think of it when they think of the MGB. But like many cars of the 50s and 60s, it was modified to meet the legal requirements of the American market, hence the changeover to rubber bumpers. Now, for those of you interested in cars changing over to meet American regulations, another really good example that you can think of quite quickly is the Morris Minor. So originally that was a low-light car, but when they decided to go to market in America, that's when they switched to the highlight. And it was literally just to meet the criteria of the time, nothing else. But I think it's very interesting how even British cars of the time were changing quite considerably to meet that market, even though really British cars weren't a big thing because America had its own thing going on. Now, the bumpers weren't the only thing that changed for the US market, because when it went to the US, it also went on heightened suspension. The reason for this was to bring the headlight level up, and that was again to make sure it met those guidelines. At launch, the MGB was fitted with the BMC B-Series engine. We've talked a lot about this actually in previous videos, so it was fitted things like the Marina, and I believe we spoke about it in the Austin-Cambridge video as well. It was a really popular engine for the time, and for those not familiar, because I know some of you may not be, it's a straight 4 engine producing 95 brake horsepower and has an estimated fuel consumption of around 25 miles per gallon, although I have seen people get a lot more out of those, so that's perhaps a little bit on the conservative side. However, not resting on their laurels, in 1967, MG introduced the MGC, and this was available as a Roadster and GT configuration and featured the larger 2.9 litre C-Series 6-cylinder. Now, that was capable of a whole lot more because you got 0 to 60 in 10 seconds and a top speed of 120 miles per hour. Following on from this, in 1973, the MGB was available with a 3.5 litre Rover V8, and this was available until 1976, although what you gained in power, you lost in fuel economy because this was only generating around 20 miles per gallon. Transmission on these between 62 and 67 was a 4-speed manual box with a straight cut non-synchro first gear, and overdrive was an optional extra. This was carried over from the MGA, but it did have a few upgrades and changes because, of course, with that B-Series engine, it needed to cope with that additional output. In 68, the box became fully synchro, which was based on that MGC. A 3-speed auto was also offered, but wasn't really a popular choice because why would you buy a sports car and put an automatic into it? Different grills were used on these throughout the lifespan of the MGB, from the chrome slatted grille featuring the MG Octagon to the less desirable fish mouth recess grille to the honeycomb grille. Now all the cars between 1962 and 1974 you can change those grills about, but anything post 74 rubber bumper era you can't just change the earlier grills around on a straight swap. Wheels on these again changed throughout production. Earlier cars had either the wire wheels or the hubcapped wheels, and later MGBs sported the British Leyland Ross style wheels, which were fitted until the end of production in 1980. Now, a really popular mod that people do nowadays is put mini lights on these, but mini lights are perhaps my most hated wheel, so if you have got these on, for goodness sakes, go for one of the nicer options. And finally, if you pick an MGB, you'll be in very good company of many celebrities who've picked one too, including Sting, Richard Hammond, Prince Charles, who I think had an MGC, which he later gave to Prince William, Bill Wyman, George Best, and of course, one of my favourite actresses, the fabulous Joanna Lumley. Now I'm going to hand over to my friend Kev, who will tell you a little bit about his MGB. If you watch IDRIVEACLASSIC regularly, this won't be a new face, because Kev and I have worked on many videos together, including the recent cylinder head video. So yes, over to you, Kev, and tell us a little bit about your MGB.
Hi there, my name's Kevin Hurst, and this is my 1971 MGB Roadster. I've owned the car for about 5 years and done quite a lot of work to it. I've converted it to overdrive, put poly bushes on it, reconditioned radiator, all the things that you do with old cars to try and make them good, put electronic ignition on it, etc. I use it quite a lot in all weathers. It's absolutely blooming freezing today, as in January. Happy New Year to one and all. We go away with it, my wife and myself, for weekends away. We go to the Yorkshire Dales quite a bit and all over the place. It's out and about all the time. Obviously not last year, hardly used at all last year, regrettably. It's been mainly used for a lot of film work. It's been in Mamma Mia 2 when I had to drive it down to Oxford for an absolutely amazing shoot that I've never seen anything like that before in my life. It was massive, and lots of other things. Briefing counter. It's just recently been on the programme It's a Sin, filmed in Manchester, extensively on that, just as a background vehicle. I'll use it every single day. It's completely reliable. I absolutely love it. And my first memories of MGBs was when I was a 7-year-old child, and my favourite programme at the time was called The New Avengers, and I remember Purdy driving a Sanglo rubber bumper MGB, and I thought, wow. I got very excited. I don't know whether it was Purdy or the MGB. It was probably the MGB, I would have thought. But that's basically it. It's a work in progress. It's not perfect, but it's used every single day. If necessary, I intend to respray it this year, and that's it.
So coming inside this car today, I wanted to highlight a few little bits that I thought were quite interesting and that I thought were unexpected on this car, because of course when this car was sold, it was sold as an affordable sports car. It wasn't something that was totally out of reach of millions of people, like an E-Type Jag, for example. It was something that people could aspire to in a way that they might actually achieve it. It wasn't just a bit of a pipe dream. Now, one of the things that I really liked first of all was the map light. It's one of those things that for a car that you are maybe taking on adventures and away with you, that you would definitely want. And next to that we have the glove box. This is disappointingly small, but really look at the size of the car and look at how much space we've got to play with. It's kind of what we would expect, complete with a super cover brochure. I'm hoping to God we don't need any breakdown cover today from them. On the front of that, we've got that St Christopher you may have spotted. That was actually Kev's granddad's, and he remembered it as a child, and so has brought it into here, which is actually quite a sweet touch. Now, coming into the centre, we've got these two big plastic dials. I do like the chrome finish on those, actually, very nice detailing. Now these control our heater, so in terms of how hot it is and the direction of the heat as well. Now these 3 switches, we've got the heater is your first one, the one in the middle, that's your wipers, you've got 2-speed wipers. Next to that is this push button, and that is for your window washers. I've got that on the Morris Minor, and let me tell you, it's so annoying. I hate it. Mine personally has been converted over to one of those switches like that, so it runs on electric, then it's much better. But hey ho, the car's very original, so it's nice to see. Next to that is the only unoriginal item, which is the cigar lighter, so that's been put in at a later date. Next to that we've got the choke, the water temperature gauge, and above that we have got the pull for the lights. Coming in front of us, we've got 2 dials. So we've got our speedo to the left, and to the right we have got our rev counter. And in the centre of that, we've got this little turny switch thing. And this is actually for our panel light, so it just controls how bright it is. And one stalk, which is obviously our indicators. And in the middle, we have got our horn. So I'll push that for you. And then over to the right, we have got our fuel gauge and we have got our overdrive. So the overdrive is something that Kev put in himself, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that as we drive along. Now, before we get it started up, and I'm sure you're dying to hear that B-Series engine, we're just going to have a quick walk through the gearbox, and then we'll be ready to head off. Now, I'll give you a quick whistle-stop tour through the box. It's exactly as you'd expect, so just check we're in neutral there. It does need quite a firm hand to guide it in, no pun intended. So bring that across and show you. It's quite a notchy box actually, but it's not too bad once you get the hang of it and you're out driving. And of course got that overdrive, but I'll show you that when we go out for a drive. So let's start the car up and you can hear what she sounds like. So let's set off in first gear and try and get some of that overdrive action in as well. So this is probably a lot snowier than most MGB Roadster drivers are out in today. Now when I booked this for a test drive in the summer, I definitely didn't see us eventually getting round to it when there was snow on the ground. But you know what? The MGB Roadster was built for adventure, and I feel like this is a bit of adventure as we go through these snowy roads. Although as we approach some of these villages, actually it is starting to disappear. Now immediately when I got into the car, there were a few things that I liked and a few things that I didn't. So I wanted to talk to you about them both and explain my reasons why. So what do I like about the car? So let's focus on the positives. So the first thing is that B-Series is something that I'm very familiar with under the bonnet. But when you take it from something like the Land Crab or from the Morris Marina, where it gives it enough power and you feel like you've got enough get up and go, and you put it into something like this, well, it's that excitement that I enjoyed in that Marina to the power of 10. It's so nippy. Now as we drive along, you'll see that it's very responsive, and it's handy, like in terms of sticking to the road. It's just, you only have to move the steering wheel the slightest amount and it obeys command immediately. It's beautiful to drive. However, the thing that I don't like about it is the steering is so heavy. Now I imagine that when we're out and about, on these amazing adventures that we're now going on in this MGB Roadster, that isn't too much of a problem, because we're not going to be manoeuvring in and out of spaces or tight jams. But if I was to take this to a multi-storey and try and reverse park it, I imagine that some of the joy would wear off pretty quickly. It's very, very heavy. Another thing that I'm not too keen on is how low we are to the ground. So of course that is your standard positioning for a sports car, but for me, I'm going to be honest, I'm not keen. I much prefer cars when they feel a bit higher off the ground. Now, if you have driven a later MGB with the rubber bumpers, you'll know that they are a little bit slower than this. Now, the reason for that is, of course, those rubber bumpers do weigh more, and they updated the suspension as well. So that, coupled with the rubber bumpers, meant that the cars were a lot heavier and therefore aren't quite as sprightly as these chrome bumper examples. It's been quite a fun drive today, showing you around and showing you a bit of where I live as well, because I never really take you guys out and show you what it's like. I really hope you've enjoyed the video. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you, Kev, for this MGB, and until next time, take care and drive safely.